I'm Cole, and this is Midnight Files. The story of Nzih Al-Obeid. Today, I'm bringing you the story of a criminal. But not just any criminal. This one is a special kind of rotten. His name is Nzih Al-Obeid. He lives in Lebanon, in Beirut, and our story takes place in the year 1985. So what's Nzih's deal? Well, the man owns a plumbing and sanitation supply shop. Pretty normal, right? One day, a man named Mohammad Al-Tari calls him up. He says, "Hey, I've got some stuff in my house that needs replacing, needs fixing. It's a whole thing. Major work." Nzih says, "No problem. I'll come by and take a look." They agree on a price. Nzih comes to the house, gets to work, and gets it all done. But the bill came out a little steep. Now Mohammad Al-Tari was a man of modest means. So he goes to Nzih and says, "Nzih, may God bless you. Is it okay if I pay you in installments? Give me a little time." Nzih smiles and says, "Of course, no problem at all. Take your time." But here's the thing. The installments, that was never the real reason Nzih kept coming back to that house. Because during those visits, Nzih got to know a woman. Her name was Nadima. She was an actress, and she was available in a certain way. She was the one bringing him food and drinks while he worked, just being hospitable, the way people do. And little by little, Nzih started to sense that she was open to something more. They started talking. Things started developing, back and forth between them. So now Nzih needed a cover, an excuse to keep showing up at the house. Nadima agreed to tell people he was still collecting on the installments. And just like that, Nzih was showing up every other day. And poor Mohammed had absolutely no idea. He actually thought the guy was being incredibly patient about the debt, and he was grateful for it. He genuinely believed that Nzih was a good man, that a real friendship had formed between them, and Nzih played along perfectly. But Nzih's only goal was Nadima. After a while, the relationship between them got deeper, stronger, and it started happening at the worst possible times. The times Mohammed was away from home. The forbidden became routine. This went on for more than a year. Nadima completely fell for him. She started opening up to Nzih about everything, complaining that her husband barely provided for her, that he had money but blew it all on garbage, drinking, gambling, all of that. And Nzih, he took full advantage of that. He started buying her clothes, buying things for her kids, giving her spending money, all of it behind Mohammed's back. And Mohammed was happy. He'd come home and find Nzih there, and he'd welcome him like a friend. He genuinely believed this man was loyal, patient, a good human being. He had no idea. But Nzih had a problem. He wanted more, and Nadima, she was still Mohammed's wife. So a plan started taking shape, a plan to get Mohammad Al-Tari out of the picture permanently, so they could finally have their freedom together. First, they tried the simple route. Nadima went to Mohammad one day and said, "I want a divorce. I don't want this life anymore. I'm done." Mohammad was completely blindsided. He refused. They had kids together. And something started to shift inside him, a suspicion. He started noticing things, how Nadima's whole mood changed whenever Nzih was around, how cold she was to Mohammad, but how different she was when Nzih was there. He started feeling like something was very wrong. Nadima got scared. She warned Nzih, "Stop coming to the house." I think Mohammed is watching us. I think he's figuring it out. This hit Nzih hard. He couldn't stand the idea of being cut off from her. He wasn't ready to let go. So, Nzih rented an apartment, one of those furnished short-stay places, a daily rental, and he invited Mohammed over. "Come on over. I've got drinks. We'll hang out, have a good time." Mohammed said, "Sure, why not?" and headed over. And Mohammed started drinking and drinking and drinking until he passed out completely. And in that moment, Nzih pulled out a gun. He shot Mohammad Al-Tari, and he killed him. But what happened next? That's where this story goes from dark to something else entirely. Nzih had planned this carefully. He had specifically rented an apartment on the top floor of the building. Because the plan was never just to kill Mohammed. The plan was to disappear him. He carried the body up to the roof, and he threw Mohammad Al-Tari into the building's water tank. This building, I don't want to name it by name, but it was functioning like a small hotel or inn. And that's where Nzih left him. Then he went back downstairs, wiped down every surface, cleaned every fingerprint, handed back the key, and walked away. And he went straight to Nadima. He looked at her and said, "It's done. Mohammed is gone. Nobody knows where he is. Nobody is ever going to find him." And he was right. For a while. A week passed, 2 weeks, a month, 3 months. No one knew where Mohammed went. Eventually, his disappearance was officially reported. A year passed and still nothing. Nadima went to court, citing his disappearance, his absence, and the court granted her a divorce. And then, she and Nzih got married, officially. Now Mohammed's family, they were not at peace with any of this. They were asking questions. Where did he go? How did he just vanish? Who helped him disappear? They pushed the Ministry of Interior. Investigators confirmed one thing. Mohammed had not left Lebanon. He was somewhere in this country. But where? Nobody could say. He was added to the missing persons list and eventually presumed dead. His family, especially after seeing Nadima remarry and knowing she'd been involved with this man Nzih even before the wedding, they started putting pressure. They pointed fingers directly at Nzih. Now, one of Mohammed's relatives happened to work with the Amal movement, a major and very powerful faction in Lebanon, especially through the 80s and 90s, all the way to the year 2000. This relative brought the case to them directly. He said plainly, "Mohammed is missing. We suspect his wife, and we especially suspect this man, Nzih, the one she married. We have information that he was involved with her long before Mohammed disappeared. He might be behind all of this." They said, "Okay, we'll look into it." They ran Nzih's name, and the man had a record. They pulled him in, sat him down. "Where is Mohammed? Where is Mohammed?" Nzih denied everything. "I don't know him. I have nothing to do with this." They said, "No, we have information. You were Mohammed's friend. You were doing work in his house. You know his wife, Nadima. You married her right after he disappeared. You know where he went. Talk." He wouldn't budge. They held him and kept digging. And then they discovered something that made the whole story 1,000 times worse. This is the part that tells you exactly what kind of person Nzih truly was. They found out that Nzih, years before this, back in 1976, had run the exact same play. He had befriended a man named Ali Badir, gotten close to him, and through Ali, he met Ali's wife, a woman named Huda. A relationship started, and Nzih and Huda hatched a plan to get rid of Ali. Nzih lured Ali into a meeting and stabbed him, killed him with a knife, but this time he didn't hide the body. Ali Badir's murder was discovered. Nzih was arrested, tried, and sentenced to life in prison back in 1976. But then, the Lebanese Civil War happened. The chaos, the destruction of prisons, the collapse of the system, and in the middle of all that, Nzih got out. Whether through a pardon, a prison break, the whole mess, he was free. And he had only served 2 years for that first murder before he was back on the streets. And then he did it again. But that's not even the most disturbing part of what they found. While they were investigating, they brought in a woman named Amina. She was someone Nzih had been involved with. At the same time, he was with Nadima. Yes, he had 2 women going at once, both of them married. They questioned Amina. "What's your connection to all of this?" She insisted it was just a casual thing. He'd come over, they'd spend evenings together, nothing major. But then she admitted something. She said that a couple of years before, he'd been at her place, had a few drinks, and started talking. Opened up. He told her his name was Mohammad Al-Tari, and that he'd thrown his body in a water tank in one of the small hotels in Beirut. They asked her, "Are you sure about that?" She said, "Yes, I'm completely sure. I actually thought about using that information to blackmail him. He had money, but I didn't go through with it. I just kept it to myself." They went right back to Nzih. "You killed Ali Badir in 1976. We know that. And now we know you killed Mohammad Al-Tari. You threw his body in a water tank. We know the hotel. Talk." And when they confronted him with the hotel name that Amina had given them, he broke. He confessed. He told them exactly which hotel, and investigators rushed there. The body was found, but what came with that discovery was a horror that nobody was prepared for. The water tank that Mohammad Al-Tari's body had been sitting in had been supplying water to that entire hotel building for years. Every guest who had stayed there during all that time had been drinking from that tank, and nobody had noticed. Nobody had checked the tank. Nobody had tested the water. They recovered the body, and remarkably, it had not fully decomposed. Nzih confessed to everything, and as the investigators kept pushing, he started talking, and what came out was a window into a deeply disturbed mind. He said, "My goal in life, what drives me, is married women. That's my obsession. I'm not interested in a woman who isn't married. When I see a married woman I make a decision. I have to get rid of her husband, and I have done that. I've gotten rid of husbands, but not all of them through murder. Some I pressured into divorce. Some ran away with me and left their homes and their children. Some separated on their own and came to live with me for a while before I moved on. It was only 2 of them that ended in murder. The first was Huda, Ali Badir's wife, back in 1976, and after 10 years, it was Nadima and Mohammad Al-Tari. They brought in all 3 of them, Nzih, Huda, Nadima, and the court sentenced them to death. But, just like before, fate had one more twist, another general amnesty. Another wave of legal changes sweeping through Lebanon, and the death sentences were commuted to life in prison. And that was the end of this story.